everyone, welcome to this new video in Life Can Be That Good. I hope you're having a great Tuesday, and today we're going to talk about shifting your identity so that your reality can shift. Now, why did I choose to talk about this today? It's because many people and many of us go through this. We become too attached to our identity. We become too attached to our personality traits and on a deeper level to an identity, so that it prevents us from actually stepping outside our comfort zone. We become so attached to who we are that we actually start to think that we cannot change. And we tell ourselves, I hear this a lot, this is the way I am. I cannot be any other version of myself. No, I cannot do this because this is the way I am. And when we describe our experiences, we tend to say, I'm this and I'm that, and I do not accept this and I do not accept that. And, we identify with all those traits as if they are permanent, as if they're etched in stone, as if you cannot be anything else. This goes against the nature of your being. As a soul, you are a limitless being. You are divine light, love, and power. And I mean this literally. When we say divine love, we mean that we are actually channels and manifestations of love as not just an emotion, beyond an emotion, as a state of being. So higher frequencies of love are not just about these emotions that can be transitory. It's actually a state of being that we can tap into when we discover the powers of our heart. When we say we are also divine light, light means intelligence, means wisdom. And therefore, as a soul, this is literally what you're made of. You're made of this great knowledge that's universal in nature. You're made of this great intelligence. And as a being of divine power or willpower, when we talk about power, it's not about, being powerful compared to others. It's about your ability to create, your ability to make things happen, your ability to maneuver. So the soul is unlimited. That's your nature. And when you're coming and imposing things on yourself that are limited through being attached to a certain identity or through being attached to certain personality trait and saying things like, no, I cannot change, or it's too late for me to change, or you start coming up with these excuses, right? We argue for our limitations. We're very good at that. So what you're doing is that you are literally imposing limitations onto your true unlimited nature. And that's just not natural. We are primed for evolution. We are primed for growth. And this is why it feels wrong and we feel void and we feel unfulfilled when we're not growing and when we're not changing. And therefore, telling things to ourselves or being too attached to our identity and saying things to ourselves such as, I cannot change, or this is not someone I can become, or no, I cannot change this version of myself, I cannot be somebody else, or this is very hard for me to do or to become or to change, then if that's what you're saying to yourself, don't really expect your reality to change much. We are creators, or if you want, co-creators of our reality, because there's mass consciousness, right? Everybody's creating at the same time. So we are co-creators. And we get to influence our reality much more than you think. You're actually creating every single moment of your life. So to start with personality. Personality comes from the word persona. And persona means mask. The origin of the word personality is persona, which is Latin, and it means mask. And mask, it's like you're wearing a vest of all the traits that you need to wear in order to perform a certain function in the world, or in order to fit in, or in order to feel safe in an environment. So this is why we wear this personality vest. For example, I'll give you an example. There are certain people whose personality is very bold, very strong. They walk into a room, they have this strength within them that they wear as a defense mechanism, because nobody else can, infiltrate their aura. Nobody else can go through it. So this is the way they protect themselves from other people's energies. This is not about the real strength that you have. This is a strength that's a mask as a defense mechanism. There are other people who have this personality of being too outspoken and they express themselves all the time. as a means of showing others that, hey, we are here, and maybe that's also a defense mechanism. It's how you fit in, how you take over a certain space. You show your presence, and this can also be as a means of validating your own existence. Some people have this personality of maybe being very shy, and they don't want to show themselves. So they do that as a means of being safe, so that they're not hurt by other people. You know, if I'm shy and I'm not seen and I'm not noticed, therefore I can stay safe. So there are so many different traits that we develop as a mask in order to fit in. Sometimes your personality requires you to just build this, let's say, strength and at work, for example, because you have to have, let's say, a strong willpower. So you have to develop this kind of strength on purpose for a certain period of time, so that you can perform a certain function or attain a certain objective. So our personality is quite flexible. You know, as a child, I used to be very outspoken. When I was really young, when I was like 3 years old, I used to dance in front of strangers. And then we had to move countries, and then my personality changed because we lived in a certain town where we were a bit more reserved, and so I stopped being as expressive and I became a bit more shy. We didn't interact with a lot of people. And then when I went to college, I was still shy because I attended a high school that was all women, and I was very awkward in me dealing with men and with guys at that age, because, you know, my environment had shaped my personality to a certain extent. So I started thinking, this is who I am. You know, I don't know how to interact with men because I've been in all-girls school. Anyway, these were just examples. However, you know, you can see that a personality gets shaped by our family, by our upbringing, by our environment, by our friends, and more so by the external environment and even social media and what we watch and what we absorb and what we assimilate from different sources that we're surrounded with and from the people around us. So your personality can be quite flexible. Now, the experiences that you go through that shape who you are goes deeper than your personality. They become these programs that you carry. You know, certain people identify so much with their country. Like I am, you know, it can go beyond patriotism. It can become dangerous. Like if you identify too much with your country and you become so biased towards your country in an obsessive, unhealthy way, you know, this can prevent you from growth. This can prevent you from accepting the other. This can prevent you from looking at other people who belong to different geographical areas as, you know, human beings, as opposed to somebody being Lebanese or somebody being American or somebody being Ethiopian or somebody being British. So, you know, all these labels, they're necessary to, let's say, for us to function in this world. But at the end of the day, they're labels. And your identity, even your identity, is subject to shift. And this is something you can choose if you want your reality to change. If you're facing certain troubles in your life that are not going away, or a repetitive pattern, it can be due to a certain attachment you have to a certain part of your personality or even identity. Now, this is just an overall definition so that it makes us more aware of what is it that we may be attached to in our identity or our personality that can be preventing us from changing our reality, or that can be preventing us from actually achieving growth or reaching our goals. Now, first of all, for us to get to know ourselves better, before I move into the process of how to shift your identity, how do we get to know who we really are, right? How do we do that inner work? Where do we start from? Now, I've come up with certain steps that are very simple, just as a start. Now, I go deeper into that in my program, where I show you the full embodiment process of how to really get to know yourself, so that you can start shifting your frequencies internally through the power of your heart, through focusing on your heart. But here I'm just going to summarize it and give you quick practical steps that you can start with. So first of all, we all want to be this ideal self. We all want to function at a level 10. We want to be that level 10 of our ideal level 10. We don't want to be a 3 out of 10, because life is a gift, life is an opportunity. And when I say you want to be that ideal self, what is that? What do I mean by that? You want to be that person who's balanced. You want to be healthy. You want to be happy. You want to be excited. You want to be inspired. You want to be driven. You want to wake up feeling this sense of purpose. It doesn't have to be a huge purpose, but you want to wake up feeling like fulfilled. You want to wake up feeling driven, feeling motivated. You want to feel that, hey, I have this vitality, I have this energy. I'm grateful to be here. I'm appreciative of the day, as opposed to waking up, on the wrong side of the bed. That's a choice that we make, by the way, waking up on the wrong side of the bed. That means our reality keeps influencing us, as opposed to us, holding that steering wheel, us intentionally and consciously creating our reality. Therefore, you want to be that ideal self, right? So what does it take to be your ideal self? What does it take to be that? Of course, you're not going to be a 10 out of 10 all the time, but it's about how do you really want to show up in the world for yourself, not just for other people. It's not about wearing a mask so that other people can approve of you or that you can feel safe. It's about how do you want to show up for yourself, right? It has to do with how much you value yourself and your self-worth. So how do you be that ideal self? You want to start by asking yourself certain questions. This is where we do like a self-inventory, like we do, and this is part of the inner work. So you want to go in and you want to start asking yourself, for example, what are the practices that I do on a daily basis for myself to bring myself into this ideal state? So what are the practices that I maintain on a daily basis? What are the practices that I do for my physical body to say thank you to me? What kind of practices do I do for my physical body? Do I perform certain movements in the form of exercises? Do I move my body around for the sake of my body, for the sake of my health? Do I eat healthy food for the sake of my body, for the sake of my health, for the sake of my well-being? Again, I'm not saying eat healthy food 100% of the time. Maybe none of us do. But it's about the extent to which you really care about yourself, your ideal self. How committed are you to showing up in a way that's best for you, that makes you healthy and balanced and excited and vital and energetic and productive in the way that you desire to be? That's how your reality changes. So start by asking yourself about your practices. On a physical level, what am I doing for my physical body? Am I breathing right? Am I doing certain exercises that are good for me? Am I moving around properly? Am I eating the right food that's going to contribute to my organs functioning really well instead of them deteriorating? So that's number one. Physically, am I smoking? Am I drinking alcohol too much? What are these practices that I'm doing for my health, for my physical body, so that my physical body can say thank you to me? What are the practices that I'm doing for my emotional body? Am I looking after my emotions, or am I using my external reality as a reason to stay sad and depressed and anxious and miserable? How strong is my inner world? So emotionally, what am I doing to maintain joy? Am I doing certain meditations that can teach me how to bring the joy out of my heart? Am I living from a place of love or a place of fear? So how am I tending to my emotional body? How am I tending to my emotions? Emotions is energy in motion. So what's my energy like throughout the day? And what am I doing? What kind of practices am I doing that help my emotions stay at the level that I want them to be at? So that they're 70-80% of the time positive and nurturing and healthy for my physical body, because your emotions are what affects your physical body. They affect your health. On a thought level, what am I feeding my mind with? How am I tending? What practices am I doing to tend to my mind? What are the sources of information that I'm exposing my mind to? Is it constantly like series that are filled with drama and misery and sadness? Is it documentaries that are good for my well-being and my health and that make me laugh, for example, because laughter is therapy? Am I exposing myself to material that helps me grow and helps me with self-development? Am I exposing my mind to the right frequencies that are nurturing for my brain? Because our brain is being primed all the time. And when I say being primed, what does being primed mean? Means being prepared to act in a certain way, or being prepared, becoming ready for a certain mode of living. If we don't have a strong inner world, our brain is going to be primed by our external environment. And to give you an example of how this works, they did this study, I believe it was Harvard. And what they've done was that they've had there were certain people, let's say at the gym, at the park, at different areas. There were people in different places, and they sent out these volunteers, and the waiters would distribute coffee, either hot coffee or a cold drink, cold coffee or cold iced coffee to the people in the park, the people in the gyms. And the waiter would literally go up to the person, give him the coffee, and turn and say, thank you, and they would leave. So it was either a cold drink or a hot drink, depending on what that person wanted. And so once these volunteers distributed the drinks, 20 minutes later, another set of volunteers came, and they would go up to these people and they would go like, hey, just can you please, I'll give you $20. Can you please read those 4 paragraphs, the story of 4 paragraphs, and please tell me what you thought of the main character. This was very interesting. So, people would say, yeah, I'll take the $20, I'll read the story. Some people didn't take the $20 and they were happy to read the stories. So after they were done with their drinks, with their coffees, let's say, or their iced cold drinks, they would read the story. They would read through the paragraphs, and then the feedback, and they would give their feedback. Those who had the warm drinks, who had the warm coffee or the hot coffee, when asked about the main character in the story in those paragraphs they read, they actually said that the main character is warm, genuine, and friendly. Those who had the cold drinks and the cold coffee or the iced drinks, their answer was, most of them, and this we're talking like 70 to 80%, their answer was, the main character in the story is cold and is unfriendly and is not genuine. What does this come to show you? This comes to show you that we are actually so primed by the external environment, so primed by what we taste, what we feel, what we're exposed to. And it affects us even, that's why there are subliminal messages in advertising. They affect us without even feeling it, without even knowing it. And therefore we give our reactions and our responses and the way we behave based on how we're primed. That's why strengthening your inner world and getting to know yourself on a deep level is like the best thing you can do for yourself. It's the best way in which you can you can sit behind that steering wheel and you drive the car instead of it being driven by somebody else. Second of all, what you want to do is ask yourself about your priorities. So you want to know what your priorities are. What are they? And are you tending to them? Right? So write down this list of your priorities. Get to know what's important to you. And then you want to ask yourself, what are my core values? Your core values are so tied up to the truth of who you are. Why? Because your core values, or what I call your virtues have no resistance. When you have virtues of kindness, of generosity, of loving others, of being connected with nature, that's close to the fabric of the soul. And when you have these, they carry no the resistance within yourself, within your system, will be much less. And then you'll be able to conduct higher frequencies. That's why the virtues are so important, because they purify your system. And when we say purify, it's not, I'm not just bringing about a spiritual concept. This is also scientifically true. Because your nervous system is like this electric wiring. And just like electricity flows through the electric wiring of an electric circuit, your nervous system will have less resistance when you fill it with love, fill it with kindness, fill it with generosity, fill it with worthiness, fill it with the ability to receive, fill it with the ability to give. And these virtues, they help to purify you. And so they help your nervous system become more conductive to higher frequencies. And when I'm conductive to higher frequencies, my ability to create becomes more, because I'm being conductive to higher energies. I'm being conductive to more energy. And therefore, when I have more energy, I can create more. I can become more. I can change things more. So what are your priorities? What are your core values? What are your virtues? And next, you want to ask yourself, what kind of growth do you want to achieve? So what are your goals? Now, they don't have to be huge goals. People sometimes fear the word goals, but goals is just a natural part of living, right? We all have goals, whether it's learning a new skill, or maybe learning a new language, or maybe it can be going to the gym, or it can be something, buying a home. It can be a large goal or a small goal. It doesn't matter, as long as you have a goal, because that's also is in sync with your ability to create. As long as we live on this earth, we're always going to have desires. We're always going to have certain goals. It's just part of this journey. So after you, let's say, write down your goals, for example, if you want to see which areas you want to grow in, and these can be related to your health, to wealth, to spirituality, to relationships, any kind of goals. Maybe your spiritual development, your self-development. Then you want to go and write down a list of your attributes. Now, when you write down a list of your attributes, you want to write about your strengths. And what are the things that you are, you're very strong at, you're very good at. And you want to list maybe some of your weaknesses. Now, your focus, the point of this is not to make you feel bad about yourself. If you're going to sit there and write all the weaknesses that you have and ponder about those and ponder on those, the point is not for you to focus on those. The point is that to just see, it's a self-inventory. So you're seeing what traits have I acquired? How am I going about my day? What am I using, right? Am I using my strengths? Am I relying more on my weaknesses? What's affecting me more? So you want to write down your strengths, your weaknesses. Of course, you want to focus more on your strengths, and you want to put a big circle around your strengths so your subconscious mind can learn that, hey, we want to focus on these. This is just a way of you getting to know yourself on a deeper level. This is just, we're scratching the surface here. Now, when you get to know your strengths, why are you doing that? Because by circling your strengths and by focusing on your strengths, you're priming your mind. And you're setting the intention so that you move in the direction that those strengths can take you through. So you're using your strengths, setting the intention to move in a certain direction. So this helps to prime your mind more. All right, so this is just one way of you following certain steps so that you can get to know yourself on a deeper level. Now, we're talking about this so that you can get to know what your identity, what your personality is, and what your deeper identity is. Now, once you go through all this, and you want to start to shift your identity, let's say you have a certain goal. For example, I want to attain perfect health, or I want to be a very wealthy person, or I want to have a great relationship. So what is preventing me from becoming this, right? So by doing what we've talked about, I can start to realize what's going on inside my system. In healing and the programs that are life transformational that we do over 3 months, we go deeper into what programs are you carrying on a subconscious level, and how to tap into your emotional body and your mental body to clear those things out so that your energy channels can open up faster and you can develop more awareness faster to clear whatever obstacles are standing in your way. So to shift your identity and to stop being so attached to this mask that you want to wear, first of all, you can start with, let's say, some people start with affirmations. So let's say if I want to be someone who has a very successful business, I will start with the affirmation of, I'm running this successful business. Now, some people, and we've talked about this in previous videos about affirmations, some people recite the affirmations, but they don't believe the affirmations while they're reciting them, because the frequencies are very far from the reality of who they are right now. And this happens because you're using your outer reality as a reference instead of your inner world. So the purpose why we get to know ourselves on a deeper level is that so we can strengthen our inner world, because your only reference should be your inner world. You are the creator. You are the creator of your reality, and therefore your inner world is your reference and not the outside circumstances. When people get attached to the outside circumstances they're surrounded with that's where they're giving away their power to the circumstances. And so they live at the mercy of whatever is showing up in their reality. And whatever shows up in reality is only the result of the previous thoughts that you've been having over the years or over the past months. Thoughts become things. So whatever I've been thinking of, or that pattern that I've been carrying over the past few months, will only manifest in my reality. And so I cannot get attached to my outside reality, because that's not what's real. What's real is what's going on in my world. What's real is those thoughts that I've been carrying. So even if your current reality is not that great, be aware that it's only a manifestation of your previous thoughts. And what matters right now is you being more attached to your inner world, your inner discovery, your inner exploration, your inner nature that can actually develop the right thoughts and the right feelings so that your coming reality will get better and better and better. You know, it's just like if you have a problem and you keep looking at the problem and you drown yourself in the problem, you're not going to find the solution, because the frequency of the problem is different than the frequency of the solution. Whereas if you go into your inner world and you explore your inner world, you're going to get insights. You are unlimited. You'd be surprised about what you discover when you go inside. We are real. We have, science has proven that we have 11 different dimensions in our brain. Imagine that. I mean, imagination is creation. If people did not use their imagination, they wouldn't have landed on the moon. If imagination was not the most important tool we have, you wouldn't see any new discoveries. You wouldn't see any new inventions. So your inner world is the strongest reference that you have, because it's the truth. And so when you go to your inner world, that's when you can actually start to change things. So when you're writing your affirmations, if you feel that they're too hollow because you don't have evidence, or because your reality is so different from what you're affirming, when we're trying to shift our identity, we want to go, I've talked about declarations. So if you want to know more about declarations, you can watch my previous video on affirmations. So we go into declarations which are more infused with energy. Or you can do something called confirmations. When I'm going into confirming my state, let's say I'm running a successful business, even if you don't have anything around you that shows that you're running a successful business, if you start confirming that to yourself without going through an internal battle, what you need to do is find any evidence from your past or from your present that can confirm this to you, that can confirm that you're running a successful business. For example, if you look at your past and you find that, let's say during your childhood, you were able to sell something to a friend, or you developed this little thing that you were able to market indirectly or to impress your friends with, that's a sign that you were running a successful business back then on a very small scale. So use that as evidence to confirm your affirmation, to develop a confirmation. If you're, let's say, someone who wants to speak in public, but you're very shy and you're trying to tell yourself, I'm a confident person, I'm a confident person, I'm a confident person, but it feels very hollow. It feels you can't get yourself to believe it. And so there's this internal struggle. Look at evidence from your past or from your present, and you will find plenty. It's impossible not to find evidence, because when you have a desire for something, that means there must have been evidence in your past or in your current situation that can back this up. So people would say, no, but there is no evidence. There has to be evidence. The only reason you don't find evidence is because we are also wired to think negatively. The mind is very cynical. So what you want to do is you want to ponder on the good. You want to ponder on what's positive and what serves as evidence that confirms the fact that you are confident. So you want to look, for example, if you're shy but you're saying I'm confident, you want to get yourself to believe that. Look throughout your childhood, look throughout your teenage years, you look throughout your college years at any situation where confidence has helped you out. And you will find many experiences. Could have been that confidence has helped you step up for a friend, for example, defend a friend. Confidence could have helped you go and help that lady cross the street, an old lady cross the street. Confidence could have helped you to volunteer somewhere. Confidence could have helped you as a child to go and save someone from a certain situation. So look at all these instances throughout your life that serve as evidence to what you're trying to confirm right now. And then your affirmation will not be hollow anymore. You'll be like, oh, I'm pondering on, I've been through that situation. That required me to be confident. Therefore, I am confident. And there's this other situation that happened the other day where I had to be confident. Therefore, I'm not as shy as I am confident. So ponder on the good. When you're creating, when you're shifting, when you're creating a different reality, you have to keep in mind that you cannot be objective. You have to choose what you want to focus on. You have to be subjective. And it is known that successful people who are highly successful, they're not objective. They're not realistic. The worst advice you can tell someone is be realistic. Be realistic means look at your outside reality, use that as reference and act accordingly. Use your outside as reference. Nothing was ever created. Nothing new was ever created by looking just as at the outside reality and using it as reference. It has to come from within. It has to come from your inner world. Of course, there are things outside that help, that are present, that help. But anything that's new, any shift we want to create, anything new that comes out from our system, any insights happen when we go deeper within and we explore. And we use the right sources from outside to help us become that which we are meant to become. So use your inner world as reference. Don't be realistic. Successful people are delusional. They're subjective. They choose what they want to focus on. Golf players, for example, let's say they hit 40 golf balls, and out of the 40, they get like only 20, hit the target, and the other 20 miss. They don't focus on the 20 that they have missed. Maybe they look at them quickly, they analyze, okay, this is where I went wrong, this is where I should have hit this way, I should have, this is how I should swing next time. But then they look at the hits that they've actually made. They focus on those hits that were successful. Similarly, in your experience, when you're trying to shift, no matter what your reality looked like, focus on the good aspects. Choose what you want to focus on. Be subjective. Ponder on the good. Ponder on what's going right, as opposed to dwelling on what's going wrong or what's not happening. When you're directing your energy and you're focusing your energy on what's going right, by making your inner world stronger, this is when your reality starts to shift accordingly. So you might face like the opposite. You might be dwelling on wealth and you might lose a lot of money. Successful people, even when they lose a lot of money, they don't look at that as reference and take that experience and say, that means I'm not going to make money again. They ponder on the good. They ponder on what went right as opposed to what went wrong. They learn from the lesson, but that's not what occupies their thoughts. They don't let that drain their energy. They fill their energy up with what they want to focus on, with what the good aspects of that experience. They ponder on that and they make that their reference. So you have to be subjective. You have to be delusional. Once you write that confirmation, you write it in the present tense, in a continuous present tense. For example, if you want to lose weight, I am easy. Write it in the third person. You can use the first person or the third person. For example, Sarah is easily losing those 10 pounds, as an example. Or Sarah is easily regaining her fitness. Or Sarah is easily running her business. When you write it in that present continuous tense, as if it's continuing to happen, and then you infuse that, you ponder on the good that's happening, you ponder on the good aspects, you ponder on evidence that confirms what you're writing or what you're saying and what you're thinking, and you infuse that with a lot of feeling. That's why the inner work is key, because you learn how to open your heart and to make your heart generate those feelings. Right? This is how we generate the right electromagnetic field, the electricity the electric part of it from the thoughts, the magnetism, the magnetic aspect from the heart. So you feed that with the right electromagnetic energy, with the right electromagnetism, and then their thoughts and your goals can actually manifest in your reality. And this is how you begin to shift your identity. And when you start having those confirmations, you want to do that over a period of time, maybe 30 days or 40 days. And this is how you begin to see the shift. What's going to happen throughout this time, let's say, if things in your reality, you have to keep in mind that they take time. Your reality will take time to reshape itself, because you have remaining thoughts that are still, that you've been thinking, or programs that you've been carrying that are also going to manifest themselves. What you want to do is not use your outside reality as reference. And that's why we strengthen our inner world, so that our inner world can be that ultimate reference, that ultimate source of energy that's leaving an imprint, that's creating with a frequency that's influential, as opposed to absorbing those frequencies from our outer world, so that we get to prime our mind and we get to prime our state of being. So this was about your identity, how to shift your identity to create your reality. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'd be happy to answer them. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it practical. And if you want to learn more about how to embody real change and how to have new frequencies and how to tap into the world of frequencies and embody that frequency that's going to change your life within 13 weeks, get on a free frequency upgrade call with me and learn more. All right, I will leave the link in the comments below, and I'll see you the coming Tuesday. Take care.